How about this? U.S. banks could reportedly return more than $100 billion in capital to investors if Donald Trump succeeds in pushing to loosen regulation on those very banks. Come in, former Ronald Reagan economist Art Laffer. Art, thanks for joining us. You're going to stick around for a while. How long for that money to work its way into the economy and ultimately the growth, GDP?
I don't think it'll take very long at all. I mean, with capital like that, you're going to have asset values change dramatically. With those changes in asset values, you're going to get the investment flows anticipating it. I think that's a great thing to do. And Dodd-Frank, in many ways, is a disaster and has really held this economy back.
But, Art, you know, the banks are a little snake-bitten. How willing are they to lend, especially those smaller regional banks that really, you know, they're the lifeblood for small businesses?
Yeah, but your use of snake bitten reminds me of your Tennessee origins there, Ashley. But it's true. Small banks especially are really being held back, and that really does hinder the development in regional areas. And once you get that Dodd-Frank cooled down a little bit and those regional banks come back, you're going to find a housing boom like you couldn't imagine. And remember, Ashley, housing is the biggest single capital stock item in the U.S.
All right. Art, I want you to stay right there. I know that was pretty quick, but you're going to come in on the markets when they open in less than 5 minutes. Stay right there. I want to check those Dow futures if we can. Markets looking to open just slightly lower. We're off about 40 points earlier. Now we think we open about 28 points lower. Same on the S&P and NASDAQ, just down slightly as we kick off a new week of trading. Oh, and this, by the way, live action presidency, of course. President Trump says we could get tax reform by the end of the year. Could that bring back the Trump rally, which has stalled out just recently? The opening bell next. We have the opening bell ringing in just about 20 seconds. As we said, the future's pointing to a slightly lower open. It'll be interesting to see whether Mr. Trump's comments, I should say President Trump's comments on perhaps tax reform getting in ahead of Obamacare is good news for the market, you would think. Will that spill over into the market, which has, let's be honest, been moving sideways for some time? Will we get another leg up? Here we are. The bell's rung. We're off and running. Well, we see lots of red, don't we? We're down 45, 43 points at the beginning. The Dow still, though, hanging in above 20K at 20,023. Almost all of the stocks, though, in the red. So who's joining us this morning on this happy Monday morning? We have Liz McDonald, Adam Shapiro, Art Laffer, we've already spoken to, and our good friend Scott Shellady. Thank you all. We have to start with President Trump saying, indeed, we may get a tax cut before the end of the year. I hope he's right. Art Laffer, right up your alley. Do you think that can happen?
I think it can happen, and I hope it does happen. The one worry I have, Ashley, is this silly pay-for that Congress is insisting on, that for every tax cut you have to have a tax increase or something else. If that had been the case, we never would have had the Reagan cuts, the Kennedy cuts, or the Harding and Coolidge cuts, which are the three major areas of prosperity in this country. So I hope they just dish that, get rid of that pay-for thing.
Yeah, amen. And retroactive to January 1st. I'll continue that mantra.
Yes, sir.
Yes, I'm channeling Stuart Varney. Listen, the Dow holding 20K right now, just above. Scott Shellady, how long do we stay here? We're moving sideways. I know a lot of it's been dependent on what comes out of the Trump administration. Where do we go from here, do you think?
I mean, if you rewind everything, we had a great move after the election, but about 6 weeks now, we've been kind of going nowhere. Look at oil's been between 50 and 55. We've got the 10-year yield keeps bumping up against 2.5. And we've got the stock market around 20,000. We've been in this no man's land for about 6 weeks. We're going to now have to start to see the economic fundamental news start, the rubber hitting the road. We're going to have to see good news from some of these economic indicators that we get on a daily basis that will be the next leg higher in this market if we do go higher. We have to see that pretty darn quick. And I think that obviously tax cuts will be one of them, but he's already talked about tax cuts. We're going to have to really see the tax cuts now as the next move higher. So that's the issue. He's talked about it now. It's got it to us, you know, where we're at. Now we have to start to see the rubber hit the road.
That's right. Talk the talk, walk the walk, and all of that good stuff. Adam Shapiro, what do you think the earnings are telling us up to this point? Some of it's been a bit muddled, but overall, do you think the guidance has been pretty good?
I don't know about the guidance. I know that the revenue picture for some companies has been good, but then you get big misses on revenue. I mean, Amazon's miss on revenue was very upsetting, and this is now the huge retailer. 40% of all retail sales during the holiday were e-commerce. That was Amazon.
Yeah.
So, I mean, at least of the e-commerce stuff. The bottom line is that what Scott was just saying, people are in a holding pattern. And yet the Senate, by the way, is crafting its version of tax reform.
Yeah.
But they've got to deliver that much sooner than the end of the year.
I'll tell you, I don't think it happens. I think they're going to call it tax relief, not tax reform. They're already talking
What's
on
the
Wall
difference?
Street because they'll do little fixes, maybe.
A little fix won't
Hang
do
on,
it.
yes, stay with me 1 second. It's important
Yeah.
because the GOP guys who could back it, they could be peeled off because and not do what Trump wants because they're saying down on Wall Street he needs political capital to do even tax relief. But he's been the botched rollout of the immigration order. They could gradually back off, and the Koch brothers are mounting an offensive against against Trump's border tax, and that's a big deal. They're saying to the taxpayers,
which is supposed to pay
correct,
for the
you
tax
want
cuts.
that $1 trillion plus consumer price hike in your district, Republican senator or congressman? Watch out. That's the Koch brothers with the Tea Party.
The president he does have political capital still with his base, and he needs
Not yet.
to.
It's getting demolished right now.
And he needs to shift away from the discussion about the repeal of Obamacare, which appears to be happening, and center on the economy and the tax reform issue, and separate out what he wants to do with
Look
NAFTA
how long
from
it took Reagan to do tax reform, right? Art Laffer.
Yeah, bring in our
sure
Art
did.
Laffer. Comment on that if you can.
I mean, we really didn't get our full tax reform until January 1st, 1983, before it actually took effect. And that's why we had the recession. And what the Kochs are doing on the border tax adjustment is, I think, completely correct. That is one of the silliest things I've ever heard. Why introduce that now when you can just do tax rate reductions and get it on with it? I mean, the corporate tax, 35 to 15%, nothing else. Just do that.
Yeah.
Let it prove itself. And then you'll be seeing everyone join on board.
Interesting. I got to move on. We could talk about this for the rest of the
Sorry.
morning. One private equity CEO, by the way, says you'd have to be, quote, suicidal to hold Snap stock. He says people haven't figured out that it's dying and facing stiff competition. Anyone agree?
Well, in Snapchat's own filing, they say we may not be profitable for some time, and
But
they've
it's
had trouble with
valued at
sales.
what, 25 million?
Yeah, 20. But Instagram
next Twitter?
Instagram has more daily active users. They've got 400 million to Snapchat's, 150 million plus daily active. So
Instagram stories.
Yeah. So is Snapchat? Is that going to be the next Twitter? That's the storyline on Wall Street right now.
Scott Shellady, what do you say? I mean, are you on Snapchat, Scott Shellady?
No, I'm not on Snapchat. And I'm not, but I am on Twitter and I'm not on Instagram. Here's what I think. You know what?
Yeah.
They're going to need to innovate. They're going to need to bring in an advertising revenue kind of a model or something. But at the end of the day, it just feels a lot like GoPro to me for some reason. So if it's a one-trick pony, they're going to have a hard time.
Art Laffer, this brings up the bigger issue of the tech companies that are so wealthy, so big, generate so much revenue, but for instance, Snap has about 1,800 employees. It's not like the old days. Is that good for the economy? Yes, they're great companies and they're popular around the world, but they have very few employees. So what do we get out of it from the economy's point of view?
A huge increase in wealth, a huge increase in prosperity, and a huge increase in consumption. But other than that, I don't see much in there. Just joking with you. There's no reason why a lot of companies cannot have a huge increase to the GDP and wealth and not have a lot of employees. That's called productivity.
Yes.
And there's nothing wrong with productivity gains, actually nothing.
I agree.
Yeah, but there again, it kind of is the old days. Donald Trump is trying to bring jobs back, get manufacturing going, but the companies generating so much have a lot fewer employees.
You don't want to go backwards in time, though, Ashley. You really don't. And bring in horse buggies and whips and stuff like that. You really don't want to do that. Do it with the corporate tax cut, and you'll see all those jobs come back.
Very good. All right, well, let's check the big board. By the way, we are down 33 points. Just coming back a little bit. Still above 20K for now, down about 0.2%. By the way, higher profit and sales at toy maker Hasbro, helped by strong demand for Disney princess dolls and board games. Who would have thunk that? The stock opening at a record high, 95 bucks on the nose. Higher profit also at Tyson Foods, helped by higher exports of beef and pork and lower livestock costs, although that stock down just slightly at this hour. Oh yeah, we talked about this a little earlier. Tiffany CEO ousted after less than 2 years on the job. So where are the shares, Nicole?
Well, we're seeing the shares coming well off the lows. Overnight, they were down roughly 7%, now down close to 2%. But the big picture is that they've had slumping sales. The CEO is out. The chairman, Michael Kowalski, is going to step into that role now to take it over because they're just not seeing the sales. Year over year, they saw overall sales drop 4%. The flagship store right here in Manhattan on Fifth Avenue next to Trump Tower dropped 14%. And there's a couple of thoughts. First of all, right by Trump Tower is a tough place. Protester security, can't really get in there. Tough macroeconomic economy. Also just the big picture of brick and mortar. We heard last week Ralph Lauren's CEO was stepping down. We heard Macy's was trying to sell itself, though that may be a real estate story. But big picture, there's a theme here, and that is that brick and mortar has to keep reinventing itself in order to keep up with the likes of Amazon. So they're going to bring in and look for a new CEO to try and bring Tiffany back up. I wore my Robin's egg blue for this hit, just kidding. And you did see that Melania gave Michelle a nice Tiffany box.
Yes, she did. It was huge.
On Inauguration Day.
Yes, indeed.
I don't know what was in it.
Yeah, I'd love to know. Thank you very much for Nicole. It was a huge.
Yes, it was.
It wasn't a little blue box. It was a giant blue box. U.S. banks, by the way, could reportedly return. We talked about this just a few minutes ago. More than $100 billion in capital to investors if President Trump succeeds in pushing to loosen regulations. Scott, let me bring you in on this. I asked Art Laffer this earlier. If we get the bank deregulation through and everything's good, how long do you think before that works its way into the economy and push up the GDP?
I think it's, I listened to what Art had to say.
Yeah.
I think it's, 3 to 6 months. I definitely think that, nobody wants to advocate for no rules and let the Cowboys run the West, right?
Right.
But we do have to have some sort of regulation. However, the regulation we now have is so onerous, it's put a big wet blanket on this business down here, too. So if we can take some of that back, some of the stuff that's maybe, duplicitous, and we can get on with our daily lives, I absolutely think that that's a 3 to 6 month deal, and it will absolutely come through in GDP. Remember, we've got to do something. We didn't have 1/4 of GDP of 3% over the last 8 years. So it's a big job, and this would be a great step forward.
Just some
Scott
perspective.
Shelley says, don't let the Cowboys take over as he wears a cow jacket.
The cow jacket.
Yes.
Some
There we go,
perspective. Mike Mayo, bank analyst, says
Yes.
it's $110 billion. Right, the banks could return in the form of dividends and stock buybacks. So it's $110 billion. It was $70 billion, recent years.
Yeah.
So it's about 50% more. But it could be dividends and buybacks. That's something
Regardless,
different
it's
than
getting
growth.
yeah.
Well, the dividends would, but the buybacks would hit the EPS number.
Interesting. All right, Liz, thank you. How about this story? Take a look at the health insurers as we put them up here. Those are the financials. Here are the health stocks, mostly down other than United Health. President Trump saying that the Obamacare repeal may not come until later or sometime next year, which, I used the word quagmire to describe this whole repeal of Obamacare. Art Laffer, could this drag on? Is that your fear?
It's my fear, yes, but I don't think it can. I mean, it shouldn't. I mean, this mandate issue has to be addressed right away. You can't have those taxes sitting there on American producers and expect to get growth in income, employment, and output. It's been a huge burden on especially small companies, and that needs to be removed right away.